Now here we are looking at a rocket slide for children in a town in Australia called Moree. Not many of these rocket things left in Australia. I'd say that they were high maintenance and also fairly dangerous. This is a modern version of ones that we've had in Australia here, dating back into the late 60s, early 70s, of course, very much coinciding with your NASA moon mission. Now, a lot of people talk about these moon missions, but very few people really hone in on the rocket. The rocket itself just defeats the whole program. Now, when I was here and I climbed inside this thing, you could just feel the very heavy weight of this. Very heavy indeed, and it's not super solid. I mean, it's perspex, as you can see, and it's got the slide inside, but a lot of airspace. Of course, the alleged real rocket is also full of fuel. But this thing has to be built with a fair strength, of course, for safety factor for the children climbing up and down inside it. You can see all the bar work, and you can just get the feel, God, this is a heavy thing here. Try and blast this off, you'd really need a lot of energy. And if you did, it's just going to be one real dangerous thing. It's only going to go 1,000 feet at the very most in any direction. Might be a few thousand feet if you're real lucky, and then it's going to come hurtling back to Earth. So that in itself is the big story with NASA that is not covered. There's all these people carrying on about this mud flood and other such silly topics to do with many things on the YouTube in the last few years, but very few people have looked at the nukes or the rockets. And of course the two go hand in hand. Meant to believe that the Americans and Russians have all these things like this loaded up at the top with nuclear warhead and the rest of it with fuel, and that they can go thousands of miles, direct themselves with pinpoint accuracy and land on top of your head and blow you to bits. Of course, that is a very, very good little fear porn. Yes, I didn't go very far in this rocket, that's for certain. It all looked very dangerous to me. That's inside the slide of the rocket. And here's the view out of the top of the rocket. Interesting place to Moree, because there is mud in Moree. It's a big river mud flat, but certainly no evidence of mud flood in Moree either, I might add. Yes, here's the local river just opposite where the rocket is. And interesting thing, I'm going to look a lot more at these rocks, but I had a comment from Dylan Ellis, and he's big on the geology type question. And I have to agree with what he was talking about with these rocks being formed at low temperature. He was on how it's to do with electricity, how they bond together, and this is sort of very plausible to me, because we're taught about all this high heat, and I was only looking at some rocks the other day, and they really just look a lot to me like what cement is. And of course, when cement does set, it does get a bit hot, so it fuses together, but it certainly doesn't get molten. And there are videos here with people blowtorching rocks, and they do not melt. So certainly the idea of molten rock is something else we'll be looking at in this channel, as we also look at the preposterous idea of a huge mud flood in 1850. And wouldn't it have covered all this, and this just be a real muddy creek a few feet higher now? There's all these exposed rocks. There's so many rocky creeks in Australia and rocky terrain where there's just gibber rock, no mud whatsoever on top of the surface. So somebody must have come and scraped all the mud away. Yeah, it's just another picture of the river here running through this sort of rocky cascade, as you can see. And what relief to jump in here. Moree is a very, very hot place, that's for certain. Very flat and very hot. Certainly look, no mud here, all rock. So at this stage I want to thank the people who support me by way of my PayPal on my blogger or from my Patreon account. That's where I just posted a picture of the rocket, and I do put the odd thing up there on Patreon or blogger, and people who know me well do know this. This channel here, Nuke Hoax, is certainly not as loved as the other channels, so if you can, go and watch a number of the videos on this particular channel you're on here now, and give them a few likes, and it might help the channel grow a bit, because it certainly has really been stagnating, this Nuke Hoax channel. Alright, thanks very much to the people who do support this channel. It's dropped off quite a bit here. Patreon, I saw an article where Patreon are against free speech too, and that doesn't surprise me whatsoever. And I'm sure the mud flood is a free speech that they're particularly supporting by the look of things on here. So I'll continue to look at the mud flood and the actual psyop nature of this whole thing. Whatever you think about it, look at the way it's all been released at once. And people are saying it's to denigrate the European culture, and I tend to agree with that idea.